Lilith, I opened up your InDesign file, and a couple of things. Your bullets just drive me absolutely batty, which is why I wanted to do this and show you how this works, because it's pretty nutty. Real quick, I don't have the fonts installed that you used here, because I didn't bother to deal with that. And I moved this little guy out of the way just so he'd be out of the way for a second. You can't see it on the recording right now, but I have your PDF document that you submitted in a browser window behind this window. And skills practice activities, by the way, was cut off. You will know when text is cut off because you will get an InDesign, this little teeny little square with a plus sign in it, and that indicates that there is text that is still in the frame that is not displayed. A handy trick to figure out what's the quickest way to just fix it: double click on one of the ends and it will just chunk it. Since the fact that it did this so much, that tells me that there are superfluous returns down there, because the text box will most likely be able to sit right there with no problem. And as that is, there it is. So I have a bajillion panels that are open right now, and let's see if I can get them to show up for you, because the way that my screen recording thing is working. InDesign has a tendency to want to load in what I think is a completely useless new modern way. So if you go to Window, Workspace, you're probably on Essentials. That's what this defaults to. Essentials is a fancy way of Adobe saying, what if there were no options? You can go to Essentials Classic, which is sort of, maybe it's just me being a little old school, I don't know, but that's what it used to be. And when you do that, you will get things that actually look like stuff that does stuff, like, font size, like when you click into things and like the font and colors and the alignment, things that people tend to care about. And when you want to sort of screw around with the bullet points, you have them inserted as bullets in here. I'm assuming that skills practice activities should sort of be in line with this list, not sort of chunked over a little bit. And so what do we have here? Well, we've got 3 bullets, and we've got the sub bullets, one of which is not behaving very well because it has a different line height. You can see by up here, the line height, the little space between the things, the leading as it's called, is at 8 point on this. But if I click down here into this one, it goes away, which is usually a sign that it has something else applied. If it doesn't look like it, it is usually because there is like a little superfluous thing at the end, like a return or a space, and that space actually carries formatting with it. So that fixes that, making sure that all of those are at 8 point. The line spacing between each of these is fine. You may decide, however, that the space between these things is bonkers. And the way that you sort of noodle around with this is in the paragraph settings. And I think that you alluded to this, and I think that you were onto this, that if you look at this, like there's the left indent, and you can sort of chuck that in, but it carries the whole paragraph with it, which maybe isn't necessarily what you wanted to do. It's this one here. It's the first line left indent that controls the bullet. And so you can move it up to the point where you'll notice that you can go negative 0.3125 inches, which is the equivalent of what the paragraph indent is. So if you want it to actually be further away, you actually have to increase this and decrease that. It's dumb. If you want to bump them in, you can move them in up to the point that you get the same number, just a positive and a negative integer on that. Okay, and if you do, it's like, can't do that, it's outside the frame. You have to move both of them in the same way. So that actually decreases the amount of space between the bullet and this, which is probably what you want. And then the same thing applies down here, where if you want those bullets closer together, which I think that you probably do, you can move them over, and InDesign will sort of intelligently carry them along, but not always. And so you can go all the way back the way that it was, but you were correct insofar as here, but you get these weird chunks because InDesign is spectacularly stupid with bullet points. And so really what you want is probably something a little bit more like this. That way they're all in there. The other thing to make note of, you had this text wrap on, which is probably part of what your consternation is. You need this much space in order to get that skills practice activities line in there. If you come into your text wrap on this, I don't know that you really need the text wrap on there. If you just do no text wrap, you don't need, obviously it can't be over here. Just shrink the frame without shrinking the image. Because if you just have your frame over here, originally I think you had it sort of like this, but there wasn't anything special about the wrap. It wasn't like it was like around someone's head or around a hand or some other object or something, in which case this, you know, works a little simpler and sort of makes the formatting a little easier to contend with in that. What else would I say about this? It's these blocks of text, like this is you've just got so much space in here, and this stuff costs money, right? Like people don't like it when all this stuff kind of gets wasted because it costs a lot, and so your paragraph spacing on this one needs to be, I don't know, something not that. Where is the paragraph spacing on this? Why is this so much? Probably because you have this set to like an inch. Something like that. Like these things are just like, I don't know, these are long sentences, right? But you've got this space down here that can be used for something. The go-to suggestion that I usually always have is that it's really kind of nice sometimes to have like a single photo of a person hanging out down here, not with the backgrounds. This is the thing that I don't like. This is a personal taste. I'm not ragging on this in particular. It is a design choice. I do not like it when there are just these sort of big, like, square things that just sort of get stamped in there because it's very dull. It's very boring. Like, I don't even know. Like, sometimes even just twisting the thing can make it slightly more visually interesting. I don't know. I like it when there are objects in the frame that flow around the text, right? Like a really great magazine tends not to do this unless these things are important to context. And in some component of this, it is, right? Because it's a classroom and you want to show that it's a classroom. But at the same time, it's like you could have like a single person of a photo of a person's face down here. I'm just going to sort of rough this in. But if you had like, you know, their head and then sort of their body right here with like their shoulder kind of coming off, and that's it with no background, you could then wrap the text down and around so that way it sort of fills up this space up here and this space with the wrap. And as it does that, I think maybe I could do this if I group these and you can see sort of what I'm talking about. Like that. It takes the same amount of text and makes it feel so much fuller, right? And so if we just, let's see here, leave it at that. It's the same text, right? And you could flow it around the person's face and you have a visual that's down there as well, as opposed to just sort of a big empty block down there. The other thing is that whenever you have the opportunity to make the paragraphs do so, it makes it so much easier to read. You've got a lot of space on here for these sorts of things, and so you could move these things down and you'd have it, right? Be cautious about when you have sort of what I will call vague headings like this, like the details. The details of what? Because if a person's someone like looking through this, and it's like about Susie's Place, I don't need to read it because I know what Susie's Place is. Types, programs Susie's Place offers, which is sort of a clunky headline. Child safety matters and teen safety matters. I think you probably meant something like, I don't know, 2 types of programs that Susie's Place offers. I would also encourage you to, I don't know, like I mentioned this in a comment before as well, your fonts are a little all over the place here because you've got like Proxima Nova in here, but you have some of these written with the caps and some of them written with the small caps, and so it gives you these sort of weird like T and D when they're all written in caps like that. It also gives you weird things like this big fat apostrophe up there. You might consider just writing the whole thing a bit like that, right? Offer. Perhaps. I think that's a little cleaner looking than sort of this weird camel case that you've got going on there. But I think you'd be surprised at how much room you actually still have left for a lot of stuff. Same thing over here with this page, where you've got these big arrows that take up a lot of space and don't necessarily add a whole lot of value. The paragraph indent, you didn't do that on the others, but you did on this one. And when you do that, that actually fits nicely. It fits better because then critical is no longer an orphan the way that it was on a line by itself. I'm going to assume that these little things right here, because I don't have the font installed, but you've got the character mismatch there. I'm going to assume that's probably because of the fact that I don't have the font installed, because it does not appear in your PDF. They appear as stars. So anyway, that's how you deal with those bullets. It's the paragraph thing. It's these two. It's the whole left indent and the first line indent. You basically chuck the whole paragraph over and you pull the first line back, and that will sort of allow you to control where those things land.